What do you miss about the 90s? I honestly miss the internet from the 90s. I spent so many hours exploring, reading things. Every webpage felt like I was visiting someone's house. They were so personal as design standards did not exist yet. I enjoyed my Netscape navigator, and I loved my iChat rooms. Keep in mind I was like 9 and 10, lol. So I mostly spent time in Pokemon chat rooms that had bots. Discord is not the same as the Ike days. GeoCities. The pages would take forever to load because of complete nonsense, but it was awesome. 36 GIFs and an autoplay 20-second loop of music, just to see someone express about their favorite rock. That Friday afternoon after school feeling, when you knew you had 2 glorious days before you had any responsibility again, so you'd call your friends on the landline and hope their parents didn't pick up so it wouldn't be awkward, and you'd get together and just go outside. That was it. There was no plan, but maybe somebody would bring a football, and you'd have a pickup game at the park. Building cubby houses, playing in the creek, rollerblading, then coming home and playing Sega Nintendo. I miss taping stuff off the TV, hanging out in my room, still playing with toys, reading cool magazines, going through my card collections. The hype of the cinema back in the 90s, not being a slave to technology, but still having wicked gadgets like Walkmans. There was a time when tech supplemented life rather than defined it. Before we had mobile phones, my wife and I would plan to meet at a certain street corner at a certain time after work. We sometimes had to wait for the other person to show up, but we knew they would. Reminds me of a time when my family and I got split up during a graduation ceremony, not mine, and we couldn't find each other. This was before cell phones were common, so half of us ended up going to a steak dinner and the other half ordered pizza at the house waiting for the other half to show up. Good times, good times. The 80s was Cold War paranoia, and the zeros was terrorist paranoia after 9/11. The 90s was this oasis of calm in between 2 paranoid decades. The end of history. Not being contactable 24/7. Peace of leaving schoolwork and not having to deal with their nonsense till tomorrow. Air travel. Holy crap, I miss 90s air travel. Did you know that before 9/11, it wasn't a massive pain in the butt to go fricking anywhere? Loved ones could walk you right to the gate. You could bring snacks, sandwiches, and drinks onto the plane with you. The prices at Hudson News were perfectly reasonable, because if they weren't, you could just walk out of the terminal and grab something. You never had to take your shoes off for any motherfucking thing. In fact, it used to be rude to take your shoes off in the airport. That's completely 180'd. I used to fly 3 or 4 times a year, and it was usually pretty easy. Now, I fly maybe once every 5 years, and I absolutely dread it. My local airport used to have a viewing tower people could chill in even if you weren't traveling. You could just go watch. That's all gone. We didn't live online yet. The internet was in its infancy and was a fun way to pass the time, but it hadn't consumed us. Business was still being done in brick and mortar stores. Our social lives were offline, etc. There was almost nothing to be purchased online, other than the online bookstore called Amazon. Pretty cool because they had a bigger inventory than you could fit in a building, and so it began. I worked in an Amazon warehouse in the late 90s. Thought it was the best job ever since I'd see about 50 books a day that I'd want to read later. Back then they hardly sold anything but books. The rest, CDs mostly, was in a caged off area toward the back of the place. Going to the mall and hanging out with friends. Malls were awesome, and I hate that the strip mall style has taken over, especially up in Canada, where it gets to -40 in the winter. Back in the day you could legitimately spend hours wandering the mall, indoors and warm. Now it is depressing. Maybe the big malls like Mall of America or West Edmonton Mall are still okay, but the ones in my city are crap. My mom would drop me off with friends and we'd call her from a payphone when we were done. We'd see a movie, play in the arcade, have an orange Julius, and just hang out in the food court. Sometimes we'd have to scramble to find a quarter for the payphone, checking all the coin returns and the vending machines, the floor of the arcade, even the fountain if we were desperate. The privacy. I was just a young teenager, but I only knew my best friends intimately. The rest of my class I didn't know or care. Now it's like all your followers are in your bedroom home when you post to social media. Anyway, I can't give you the details of the lives of people who I haven't spoken one word to in 17 years, simply because they friended me on Facebook back in 2005. I've started to realize that the best sign of a happy relationship is there being barely any mention of it on social media. Something my wife just brought up while talking about this post: magazines, man. Everyone had their favorites for whatever hobby or interest you had. For me it was Guitar World, picking up the issues with bands I loved and clinking along to the tab on my crappy electric guitar. For my wife it was 17, checking out the most recent trends. Or Thrasher when it was just a skate magazine and not a clothing brand. Even Rolling Stone was a big deal for mainstream artists. Then those of us into an alternate crowd, there were tattoo mags like Savage. Me and my wife used to scour our local 7-Elevens waiting for the new issue of Savage to show up. I get that you can find blogs, etc. online with the same info, and most of these mags still exist, but it's just not the same. I think magazines are due a comeback. You can focus on a long article without being distracted by the rest of the internet. Articles are written for people, not search engines or as clickbait. I think they could appeal to the retro hipster crowd in the same way as vinyl. Music felt more special because you kind of had to take some risks when buying a CD. At best you could listen to it at one of the stations in the store, but other times you might have heard a song on the radio or watched a music video on MTV. I bought some albums where only the song I liked was good, but still tried to appreciate it all. And then you had some albums that were legendary and you could bring to friends' houses just to share and listen to. Don't get me wrong, I am still amazed and appreciate having pretty much any song on my phone, but the lack of access was a fun time. The discovery and sharing was just different. I miss living a non-monetized life. Presently, I feel if there's a way to charge someone for doing or thinking something, anything, it's been or is being implemented, and frick subscriptions for everything. You're not even kidding. I was just talking to my wife about that. These days, it feels like if they could charge or tax you for looking at something the wrong way, they would also agree on subscriptions for everything. Also, more things are cheap, disposable, one-time use, and you have to buy another. Talk about splitting hairs on making a buck anymore. I also miss the economy of the 90s. Not for myself, but I feel bad for kids who have to experience bullying 24/7. When I was a kid in the 90s, I went to school and these kids made fun of me, but then I went home and it stopped. Now, with social media, the bullying can invade kids' lives outside of school. Kind of a tangent, but not having your life invaded outside of homework school was so nice. Most people not even having cell phones. You had true insulation from society at home or anywhere. I turned 10 years old in 1990, 16 in 1996. The internet was a fun and chill place to be. It felt like a secret sometimes. Most of my IRL friends weren't online, and if they were, it was just AOL. I had a website, did Usenet and IQ, and I could be as anonymous as I wanted to be. It felt like such a vast and creative space back then. I haven't felt like that about the internet in a long time. I didn't know the news all day, every day. Oh, and there weren't TVs in every fast food restaurant and bar. Yeah, you'd find TVs in sports bars and doctors' waiting rooms, but they weren't blaring the news 24/7 like they do now. People weren't so obsessed about decorating and redecorating and renovating their houses. I miss the summers when I was in middle school, when I would just reread my favorite books and then try to write short stories about some of the characters. I didn't know there was such a thing called fanfic. I miss how there was always some sort of one-off comedy or drama at the movie theater. Not everything was part of a series or franchise. There were dollar movie theaters. And even at the first run theater, I could go in late afternoon, early evening and get the matinee price of $4. I miss seeing Tori Amos, Smashing Pumpkins, Alanis, Sarah McLachlan for about $30 for a decent seat. I don't miss all the smoke at the concert venue. This is going to sound depressing, but I was in my teens and had optimistic hopes and dreams for the future, both for myself and for the world in general. It's all been replaced with misanthropy. I'm pessimistic about the future and have very low expectations of what's to come for humans, including myself. I'm 40 and have aged pretty well. My eyes, though, I look in the mirror at myself and can tell that I'm mostly dead inside at this point. The spark is gone. The gaming. N64 with GoldenEye. Ocarina of Time. Rogue Squadron. It was my peak computer gaming time too, with hours spent on several Sid Meier, Max's and Roller Coaster Tycoon games. My hopes and dreams. I was a teen in the glorious 90s and my life hasn't turned out the way I thought it would. I'd give anything for a do-over. There's still time to set it right. Being a child, Pokemon being brand new. Sitting in the Walmart parking lot in my mom's minivan playing Pokemon Yellow with my Gameensuda magazine as she shopped inside. A boy named Josh brought in Pokemon cupcakes when I was in first grade, the kind that have the plastic ring with the image stuck on top. I got Charmander and I remember not giving a crap about the cupcakes themselves but just being super hyped for the ring. LOL. Now my own kid is in first grade and you're not allowed to send in treats anymore because of both COVID and allergies of the other kids. There was a large goth scene. I like the goths. All the ones I knew cared for each other, were good people at heart, might have a tough exterior, but they were the kind of people you want around when you are feeling unsafe or had a mental health crisis. It's funny, I was thinking about this the other day when people were posting about how concert goers in mosh pits look after each other. My best friend and boyfriend were friends with all the punks at my school. They stuck together all through school, never fought, just hung out. And now, decades later, they're all still friends and stay in touch. Chilling at the mall, record stores, only landlines and pagas, house parties with no surveillance, fake IDs before barcode scanners. Last time I felt truly free. I'm a Zennial, so being in middle age now, I miss everything about the 90s. I really miss having no true responsibilities but choosing what color jelly shoes to wear that day or begging my mom to bring me to the store for more stickers for my sticker album. My childhood. Riding my bike, running around with friends, playing Super Nintendo with those friends, then later, playing the Nintendo 64 I bought with my paper route money. People having real fun. I think people are more concerned with posting something and going viral now. I really hate that you can just be minding your business, doing something with family or friends and enjoying yourself, and somebody will randomly record what you're doing so they can call you corny and get likes and views. People are too scared to actually let loose and have fun because there's always somebody with a phone, waiting to catch you looking silly while you do anything so they can record and post it. I'm gonna ramble, but stick with me. My mom keeps things a long time. Like a long time. The other day she was clearing out the bathroom and gave me some body wash that dated back to the late 90s. It was green apple scented. I took one whiff of it and was instantly transported to cruising down the highway blasting semi-charmed life in the hyped up positive vibes of the late 90s, as opposed to the grunge of the earlier years. I feel like everything was apple scented, green apple scented. I miss that smell and I miss the carefree feeling of my late teens, early 20s. TLDR. I miss the smells and the feelings. Are my glasses rose tinted? You bet they are. D. For me it's that perfume exclamation in a black and white exclamation point shaped bottle, and Cool Water or CK1 reminds me of guys from that time. Just as a side note, the amount of not being born yet responses in this thread blows my mind and freaks me out, realizing that so many people I talk with here weren't, in fact, even born yet when I was just about to start high school, yet here they already are. On Reddit, as fully functional human beings, with computer skills, and formed opinions. Yet here they already are, on Reddit, as fully functional human beings, with computer skills, and formed opinions. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Saturday morning cartoons. No real social media. By the late 90s, we had chat rooms, but it wasn't as pervasive as it is now. Most people's internet time was limited, and we all had lives outside the internet. We all had lives outside the internet. The thing is, these days no one has remotely any idea what that is to live outside of the internet. Blockbuster. There was this magic to walking in and seeing all the VHS tapes stacked up high with so much awesome presentation. The excitement of getting a film you have been super excited about and the bucket of popcorn coming with candy and soda was just the absolute best part of the week. Things being reasonably priced. Nowadays the inflation is beyond ridiculous. Even cheap things that are low quality now require some thought and budgeting in order to afford. I remember not wanting to spend over $20 on new jeans, and actually having plenty to choose from without going to the clearance section. My childhood and TV commercials. I never got to play with sock and boppers and Miss Cleo never got to tell my fortune. Call me now. I can still hear that voice. My job life at that time. I worked at an absolutely awesome company in the 90s. For the best boss I've ever had to this day. I was doing just enough business travel to be interesting, and my wife got to come along on a few trips, which was pretty awesome. Finished uni in 1992, got married in 1995, bought our first house in 1998. It was a good decade. I miss originality in the big blockbuster film industry. I miss when going to the movies was incomparably greater and more fun than watching movies at home. I miss shows that were truly episodic. You couldn't stream or record shows, so the writers had to make every episode interesting to both people who watched regularly and people who might just be joining in. I miss having the whole family or lot of friends having to be at the same spot, in front of the TV, at the same time, so that we could all catch our favorite TV shows. I miss being able to remember like 100 phone numbers. I miss AOL. I miss the times when playing video games with your buddies meant we had to meet at someone's house. I miss having to meet up at in and out or Friday night to find out what everyone was doing or where a refreshing gathering might be taking place. I miss not having to worry about someone if you couldn't get in touch with them like right this second. You just kind of trusted people were good, or that they were on their way, and they usually were. I miss the general feeling that you didn't have to be obsessed with your diet, fitness activity, or what the latest stupid freaking life hack was, because no such thing exists anyway. I could go on. In general, access to data is as crippling as it is helpful. I'm not always sure we know how to make good sense information. I think I was happier when looking something up meant a trip to the library rather than picking up my phone. The car design mostly. Cars from 90s era carried really unique design lines unlike today. Every single company feels like the copycat of each other. Other than that, the lack of social media, fashion and grunge music. Pop up and down headlights. Childhood. 90s cartoons were so much better than they are today. Kids these days are like little grown-ups. They don't have a childhood as we did back then. Youthful innocence. Probably applies to anyone's youth and adolescence time, but a pre-9/11 era where things were fairly stable was surely a nice time to have experienced my younger years. No internet, no social media, closeness to community. Honestly, the thing I miss the most, and the thing that is so hard to explain to modern kids, is hanging out. Before cell phones, people used to just go to each other's homes, or to some public space, and just spend time together. This continued well into the internet era, but smartphones large killed it. Early cell phones were very basic and functional. Basically just like having a landline in your car bag pocket. You could call someone or receive a call, but what did you say? Most of the time it was just making plans to hang out in person. You weren't using the cell phone for long phone calls just to chat. Those minutes were expensive. The CD player's stereo systems. I had a beautiful Sony one with double tape deck and 3 CD changer. Had lovely colored lights on the display and it was just brilliant to listen to Eliminator on. My dad got it for me and at the age of 10 I thought I was so cool. Mostly everything. As amazing as the internet is, there's no way to replace the pre-connected lifestyle. I miss a lot of that even though I use the internet every day now. I miss that there was less pressure to be perfect. Nowadays, due to social media, especially sites like Instagram, So many young people feel like it's necessary to always be dressed well, always wear a full face of makeup, etc. Sure, we had unrealistic beauty standards and plastic surgery before, but to me it feels like it's gotten much worse and also much more uniform than before. Housing in my city was pretty affordable in the 90s. In 2000 everyone's rent literally doubled, causing a wave of gentrification and the closing of tons of long-time businesses. Hope. Also, Clinton had the US budget ready to pay down debt. Bush wins. Alan Greenspan says we can't pay the debt too quickly for some reason. Massive tax cuts for rich people, and everything has been terrible since. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.